Let me ask you something uncomfortable. You have been working hard, for years maybe, putting in the hours, making the sacrifices, telling yourself that success is just around the next corner. You have optimized your morning routine, consumed the content, followed the right people, set the goals, built the vision board, repeated the affirmations. And yet, something isn't adding up. The gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now feels wider than it should. The financial freedom you were chasing seems to move further away the faster you run toward it. And somewhere underneath all the hustle, underneath all the striving, there is a quiet question you don't let yourself ask too often because it's too unsettling. What if the way I've been chasing success is the exact reason I haven't found it? That question is not weakness. That question is the beginning of wisdom. And the Stoics had an answer for it, not a comfortable answer, not the kind that fits neatly on a motivational poster, but a true answer, one that has been tested against real life, real loss, and real failure for over 2,000 years. Stay with me through this entire video, because what I'm about to share will not just change how you think about money and success. It will change the fundamental structure of how you pursue anything worth having. The trap that looks exactly like ambition. Here is the first thing you need to understand. There is a version of ambition that builds, and there is a version of ambition that destroys. From the outside, they look almost identical. They produce the same early morning wake-ups, the same long hours, the same intense focus. But they operate from completely different internal engines, and they lead to completely different destinations. The first kind of ambition, the kind that builds, is driven by genuine purpose, by the desire to create something real, to develop genuine capability, to contribute something of actual value to the world. This ambition is patient. It is grounded. It does not need constant external validation to keep moving because it is fueled by something internal that doesn't run out. The second kind, the kind that destroys, is driven by lack, by the desperate need to prove something, to yourself, to the people who doubted you, to the version of yourself that still feels insufficient. This ambition is frantic. It is never satisfied. It cannot be satisfied because no external achievement can fill an internal void. Every time it reaches a goal, instead of feeling complete, it feels the absence of the next thing. And so it runs faster, chases harder, burns more. Most people chasing success in the modern world are running on the second engine, and they don't know it. Because the culture around them, the content they consume, the metrics they measure, the conversations they have validates and celebrates the running without ever asking what is driving it. Seneca saw this pattern everywhere in Rome. Writing to his young friend Lucilius, he described men of enormous wealth and achievement who were, by any internal measure, utterly impoverished. Men who had everything and felt nothing, who had achieved everything they set out to achieve and found, upon arrival, that the destination was hollow. He wrote with devastating precision about what had gone wrong. These men had spent their entire lives in pursuit of things they called good, wealth, status, power, recognition, without ever stopping to ask whether those things were actually good, without ever examining the engine driving the pursuit. And by the time the achievements arrived, the habit of chasing was so deeply ingrained that achievement brought no peace, only the next target. This is the trap, and it is not a trap of laziness or failure. It is a trap that catches the most driven, most disciplined, most apparently successful people alive. What Seneca actually understood about wealth. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. This is important. He was not a philosopher speaking about money from a position of comfortable poverty, offering detachment as a virtue because he had nothing to be attached to. He was genuinely, extraordinarily rich, and he had thought more carefully about wealth than almost anyone of his era. His conclusion was not that wealth was bad. It was that wealth pursued as an end in itself was a form of madness. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Read that again carefully, because it is not saying what most people think it is saying. It is not a call to poverty. It is not an instruction to want less so that you can feel better about having less. It is a precise psychological observation about the nature of craving itself. The man who has little but does not crave more is, in any meaningful sense, wealthy. He has what he needs. He is not in a state of perpetual deficit. His life is not organized around the painful awareness of what is missing. The man who has much but craves more is, in any meaningful sense, poor. He is in a state of perpetual deficit regardless of what his bank account says. His life is organized entirely around lack, around the gap between what he has and what he believes he needs to finally feel okay. Modern neuroscience confirms what Seneca observed through philosophy alone. The hedonic treadmill, the psychological phenomenon where increased wealth and achievement fail to produce lasting increases in well-being, is one of the most robustly replicated findings in happiness research. We get the thing. We feel good briefly. The baseline resets. We need the next thing. The Stoic solution was not to get off the treadmill through poverty. It was to get off through genuine understanding, through the deep, practiced realization that what you actually need to feel complete is already available to you, and that no external achievement will ever provide what an internal shift can deliver immediately. The Stoic philosophy of enough. Marcus Aurelius was the richest and most powerful man on earth for nearly 2 decades. He commanded the largest military force in the known world. He controlled more wealth than any private individual today. And he wrote privately in a journal never intended for anyone else. Confine yourself to the present. Not to the accumulation, not to the next goal. The present. What is here? What is real? What is actually happening in this moment rather than in the imagined future where success has finally arrived and everything is okay? This was not resignation. Marcus Aurelius was one of the most productive and effective rulers in Roman history. He was not advising passivity or the abandonment of ambition. He was identifying where life actually happens, and observing that most people miss it entirely because they are perpetually located in a future that never arrives. The Stoic philosophy of enough is not a fixed number. It is not a specific amount of money or a particular level of achievement. It is a relationship with the present moment, an ability to recognize what you genuinely have rather than being perpetually blinded by what you don't. This is the internal shift that changes everything about how you pursue success. When you are genuinely okay with where you are, not complacent, not without ambition, but genuinely okay, you stop chasing from desperation and start building from strength. And building from strength produces fundamentally different results than chasing from lack. The practical Stoic framework for real wealth. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do you apply 2,000-year-old Stoic philosophy to the practical reality of building financial security in the modern world? 3 principles, concrete, applicable starting today. First, separate your identity from your net worth. This sounds simple. It is not. Most people in the modern world have so thoroughly fused their sense of self-worth with their financial position that every setback feels like a personal failure, and every achievement feels like a validation of their existence. This fusion is the source of the desperate chasing. When your identity depends on your financial position, you will do anything to improve that position, including things that don't actually serve your genuine long-term interest. Detach the two. You are not your bank balance. Your value as a human being is not denominated in any currency. The moment you genuinely believe this, your financial decisions improve dramatically because they are no longer being made by someone who is terrified. Second, define what enough actually means for you, not the number that would impress someone else, not the lifestyle you've been told to want. What do you genuinely need to live well, to have security, to pursue meaningful work, to maintain the relationships that matter, to have time for the things that make life feel worth living? Most people have never seriously asked this question. They have simply adopted the culture's default answer, which is always more, and organized their entire life around pursuing it. Define your enough. Write it down. Make it specific. And then notice how much closer you already are than the culture's version of success has led you to believe. Third, fall in love with the craft rather than the outcome. The Stoics were consistent on this point across every domain. The process is where life actually happens. The outcome is what you get briefly before the next outcome is required. The person who loves the craft of building something, who finds genuine satisfaction in the daily work, the problem solving, the development of capability, is the person who builds the most. Not because they are trying to build the most. Because they show up with full engagement every day. And full engagement compounded over time produces extraordinary results. The life that doesn't need to be escaped. Here is the final truth that the Stoics kept returning to, in different words, across centuries of philosophy. The person who is chasing success is, at some level, running away from the present. The chase is fueled by the belief that arrival at the goal, the number, the achievement, will produce a life that finally feels worth living, a life that doesn't need to be escaped. But arrival never produces that, because the problem was never the starting point. The problem was the belief that somewhere else was better than here. The Stoic alternative is radical in its simplicity. Build a life that doesn't need to be escaped, not a perfect life, not an easy life, a life that is genuinely yours, organized around what you actually value rather than what you've been told to want, pursued with full engagement, and without the desperate need for any particular outcome. That is wealth, not a number, a relationship with your own life. Marcus Aurelius had everything, and what he chose to write about alone at night was the importance of showing up fully in the present moment, of doing good work, of being genuinely useful to the people around him, of holding his values under pressure. Not the empire, not the wealth, not the power. The quality of his inner life, every single day. That is available to you, not someday, now. Your next step. If this landed, if something in here named something you've been feeling but couldn't articulate, don't let it just be content you consumed and forgot. Do one thing today, just one. Sit down for 10 minutes with a piece of paper and answer this question honestly. What does enough actually look like for me? Not for anyone else, for you. Write it down, make it real, and then look at how you've been spending your energy and ask whether it's aligned with that answer. That 10 minutes might be the most valuable investment you make this week. Subscribe if you want more Stoic philosophy that goes this deep. Every week, one video. No fluff, no motivation porn, just the real work of building a life that means something. Drop a comment telling me this. Are you chasing success or building it? One word. I read every single one. And share this with one person in your life who is running hard but hasn't stopped to ask why. They need this more than they know. The work starts now.